The desert stretched endlessly under the twin suns. Heat shimmered above the dunes, and the air felt heavy with silence. Daniel walked at the edge of the expedition team, his boots sinking into the fine golden sand. He was a soldier, not an explorer, yet he had been ordered to guard this group of scientists. His rifle hung at his side, but his eyes kept scanning the horizon. The team of archaeologists moved slowly, dragging scanners and equipment. They were following old maps recovered from an alien archive. Those maps pointed to a hidden structure buried deep beneath this desert world. Some believed it was nothing more than ruins, while others whispered about a lost tomb. Professor Myra, the oldest in the group, walked at the front. She was short, with gray hair tied neatly, and her eyes glowed with curiosity. Daniel respected her quiet strength. She carried no weapon, only her notebook and a small data tablet. Every so often she would stop, kneel down, and brush the sand away to check the ground beneath. By midday, the scanners began to beep. The readings showed a massive solid structure below the surface, far larger than anyone expected. The archaeologists grew excited, their voices rising with energy. Daniel said nothing. His attention was fixed on the strange feeling in his chest. It was as if the air itself was pressing against him. Soon the team uncovered the tip of a black stone surface. Sand was cleared away, revealing sharp lines and ancient carvings. Symbols ran across the stone like streams of fire frozen in place. They looked old, yet they glowed faintly, as if alive. "It is here," Myra whispered. She touched the stone with trembling fingers. "The Pharaoh's chamber." The others leaned close, their eyes shining. One of them laughed nervously. "The legends said it was only a myth." Another muttered, "And the legends also said it holds 10,000 curses." Daniel frowned at that. He had heard the stories too. Tales of ancient alien kings who ruled with fear. They were said to bind their enemies not with chains, but with curses that stretched across generations. To him it sounded like superstition, but standing before the dark stone made him question those doubts. The team worked for hours, clearing away more of the buried wall. Slowly, a massive entrance came into view. Two towering pillars flanked the door, carved into the shapes of alien figures. Their faces were stern and cruel, their eyes set with gems that glimmered even in the harsh sunlight. Above the entrance ran a long line of glyphs. Myra studied them carefully, tracing the patterns with her hand. She spoke softly, more to herself than to anyone else. "It says, here rests the Pharaoh of eternal shadows. Disturb his chamber, and the curses shall awaken." The scientists fell quiet at her words. Even the wind seemed to stop for a moment. Daniel shifted his stance and tightened his grip on his rifle. He did not believe in magic, but the warning felt real in a way that unsettled him. One of the younger archaeologists, Tomasz, broke the silence. "Curses or not, we cannot stop now. This is the discovery of a lifetime." Myra sighed, still gazing at the glyphs. Discovery and danger often walk together. As the suns began to sink lower, the team set up camp outside the entrance. Tents were pitched, equipment arranged, and lights placed around the site. Yet even with the bright lamps, the chamber door loomed like a shadow that refused to fade. Daniel took the first watch. He sat near the entrance, listening to the wind sweep across the dunes. The carvings on the pillars seemed to shift in the corner of his vision, though when he looked directly, they were still. He rubbed his eyes and told himself it was only fatigue. Later that night, Myra joined him by the door. She carried her notebook and sat down quietly beside him. "You feel it too, don't you?" she asked. Daniel hesitated before answering. "The air feels wrong. Heavy. Like we're not supposed to be here." Myra nodded slowly. "The pharaohs believed in curses, Daniel. To them, it was not just words. It was a kind of weapon. They could shape energy, bend minds, bind spirits. Perhaps not magic as we imagine it, but something far older and stranger than our science. Daniel looked at her with concern. And you still want to go inside? Her eyes shone in the lamplight. Of course. Human history has always been shaped by courage in the face of fear. We came this far, and we must know what lies beyond that door. Daniel did not answer. Instead, he stared at the massive sealed entrance. The carvings seemed to glow faintly, almost as if they were breathing. He placed a hand against the stone and felt a faint vibration, like a heartbeat deep within the wall. The next morning, the team gathered at the entrance with tools and scanners. With great effort, they pushed at the stone doors. At first nothing happened. Then, slowly, with a deep rumble, the doors began to shift. Sand spilled from the cracks as ancient mechanisms ground to life. The air grew colder as the passage opened. A smell like dust and ash spilled out, along with a faint, metallic hum. Inside, darkness stretched into the unknown. The beam of a lamp revealed walls covered with endless carvings and strange symbols. The floor was made of polished stone, untouched by time. The archaeologists gasped with awe. Myra whispered a prayer under her breath. But Daniel felt his stomach tighten. He stepped forward cautiously, rifle raised, as if expecting something to leap from the shadows. The air inside was thicker, and the hum grew louder with each step. As they moved into the chamber, the markings on the walls began to glow faintly, casting pale light over the group. The carvings told stories: tall alien figures with crowns of flame, armies kneeling before them, stars bending to their will. At the far end of the hall stood another doorway, larger and more imposing than the first. It was shaped like the mouth of a beast, fangs carved from stone, with more glyphs running across the top. Myra read them aloud, her voice trembling. Beyond this gate, the Pharaoh of eternal shadows waits. 10,000 curses guard his rest. A cold silence fell on the group. Daniel's grip on his rifle tightened. He could feel the weight of invisible eyes watching from the dark. The Pharaoh's chamber had been found. And already, the first curse seemed to stir. The chamber swallowed the light of their lamps as the explorers stepped inside. The air felt thicker with every step, heavy with age and silence. Daniel walked at the front, his rifle steady in his hands. Behind him, the archaeologists moved slowly, speaking in hushed voices as though afraid to wake something that slept in the shadows. Professor Myra held her lamp close to the walls. The glow revealed painted murals, bright even after centuries, their colors preserved as if time itself had bowed to this place. The images showed tall alien figures wearing crowns shaped like suns. They stood above crowds of smaller beings who knelt before them in fear. Some figures held whips made of fire, others carried staffs with blades that stretched like lightning. "It is not only art," Myra whispered. Her voice echoed against the stone. "It is history. These pharaohs did not rule a single world. They ruled across the stars." Daniel frowned at the murals. "Slavery," he said flatly. "Yes," Myra answered. "Entire species bent under their command." They moved deeper into the passage. At each step, the humming sound grew stronger, vibrating through their bones. The carvings changed as they walked, shifting from images of power to darker scenes. One mural showed prisoners chained in endless lines. Another showed battles across burning skies. At the far end, Daniel paused before a painting of a single figure, taller than all the others, standing over a pile of broken worlds. Myra's hand trembled as she traced the lines. "The last pharaoh," she said softly. "The one who believed in curses." The scientists gathered around, their faces pale. Tomash, the youngest of them, shook his head. "This is more than history. It is a warning." Myra nodded. "Yes. Look here." She pointed at the glyphs circling the tall figure. "They say he bound his enemies not with death, but with eternal punishment. 10,000 curses, each designed to break the body, the mind, and the soul. To disturb his chamber is to release them. The group fell silent. Even Tomasz, who had earlier laughed at the idea of curses, looked uneasy. Daniel scanned the chamber carefully. He had been trained to expect ambushes, to read the ground and the air. What unsettled him was that the danger here felt invisible. The walls seemed alive, the air carried whispers he could not quite hear, and his instincts told him this place was not abandoned. The team pressed forward. The great beast-mouthed doorway loomed before them, its fangs like blades of stone. At its center was a sealed panel with a circular indentation. Around it, more glyphs spiraled outward like a warning carved in flame. Myra bent down to study the symbols. She read aloud slowly, her voice steady but tense. Here rests the Pharaoh of eternal shadows. He who breaks the seal invites judgment. His curses shall follow the bloodline of the intruder until the stars themselves fall. One of the scientists groaned nervously. We should leave. This is madness. Tomasz protested. Leave? After what we found? Do you not understand? This is knowledge older than humanity itself. The chamber may hold technology, records, secrets of power beyond our imagination. Daniel spoke then, his voice calm but firm. Knowledge is one thing. Survival is another. If this chamber was sealed, it was sealed for a reason. Myra looked at him. Her face was thoughtful, lined with both fear and wonder. Perhaps that is why we are here, she said. To understand. To face what others feared. Daniel shook his head. Understanding won't matter if we don't make it out alive. Before anyone could reply, the stone beneath their feet trembled. A low rumble echoed through the passage, and the murals on the walls began to glow faintly, their colors flickering like fire. For a moment, the painted eyes of the pharaoh seemed to follow the group. The archaeologists stumbled back in fright. One dropped his lamp, and the light scattered across the floor. Daniel raised his rifle, sweeping it toward the shadows. His heart beat faster, but he held his ground. Myra gasped and pointed at the murals. Look. The map. Daniel turned to where she pointed. In the center of the wall, a great star chart spread across the stone. Dozens of stars burned bright, their positions marked with glowing symbols. Daniel felt his chest tighten when he recognized some of the patterns. They were human colonies, worlds under the Terran Union. That is impossible, one of the scientists whispered. These drawings are thousands of years old. Myra's voice trembled. No. Not impossible. Intentional. The pharaoh's curses were meant to reach across time. They are not bound to one age or one species. The chamber was built as a prison, but also as a weapon. If disturbed, it will spread its wrath to every world connected to these stars. The group stared in horror. The meaning was clear. Humanity itself had been written into the legacy of the pharaoh. Daniel tightened his grip on his weapon. Then we leave. Now. But even as he spoke, the sealed panel on the beast-mouthed door shuddered. A faint light began to glow in its center, pulsing like a heartbeat. The vibration spread through the floor and up into the walls. The hum grew louder until it became a roar. The archaeologists panicked, backing away. Myra stood frozen, her eyes locked on the glowing panel. It has recognized us, she whispered. Our presence has awakened it. Daniel pulled her back. Professor, it does not matter. We are getting out. The team stumbled toward the entrance, the floor shaking beneath their feet. Dust fell from the ceiling. The murals burned with light now, their painted figures moving as if alive, arms rising in silent judgment. When they finally reached the open desert, the suns were low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the sand. The great stone doors behind them rumbled shut with a final crash, sealing the chamber once more. For a moment, silence returned. The team stood in the fading light, their faces pale, their eyes wide. Myra broke the silence. "We must be careful. This chamber is not a tomb. It is a prison. And prisons are built to hold something terrible." Daniel said nothing. He looked at the sealed doorway, at the alien figures carved into its surface. His instincts told him that the Pharaoh's curses were not just stories. They were real, and they had already begun to stir. The desert wind rose, carrying a faint sound like distant whispers. The explorers could not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. The Pharaoh's chamber had awakened, and it would not sleep again. The desert camp was restless that night. The explorers tried to sleep, but none found peace. The stone door of the chamber stood behind them like a mountain of shadow, silent yet alive. Daniel stayed awake, walking around the tents with his rifle ready. His instincts told him danger was close, though nothing moved in the endless dunes. Inside her tent, Professor Myra studied her notes again and again. She compared the symbols they had seen to ancient star charts. The more she read, the more her worry grew. She wrote in her notebook that the chamber was not meant for burial. It was a machine, a prison shaped like a tomb, with its power tied to curses designed to test intruders. Near dawn, Daniel noticed the ground under his boots vibrating. It was faint at first, like the heartbeat he had felt when he touched the wall. Then it grew stronger. He shouted to wake the others. The tents shook, and the sand around the sealed door shifted as if something beneath was moving. The archaeologists rushed out, fear on their faces. Myra's lamp flickered, then died. A sound rose from the chamber, deep and metallic, like a song of stone grinding against stone. The massive doors began to glow with sharp lines of red light. Daniel raised his rifle. "It is opening." The others backed away, their voices panicked. "We sealed it? How can it open on its own?" The stone split with a thunderous crack, and the ground shook violently. From the gap, streams of dust poured out. Then figures began to emerge. They were tall, shaped like beasts of old earth. Their bodies were metal and stone fused together, and their heads were like jackals, with sharp ears and glowing red eyes. Their claws dug into the sand as they stepped forward, their movements smooth, like predators hunting. Tomash shouted, "Guardians! The curses are alive!" Daniel fired a shot at the nearest one. The bullet sparked against its chest, leaving no mark. The creature turned its head toward him, eyes burning brighter. With a speed that shocked everyone, it leaped forward. Daniel rolled aside just in time as its claws struck the sand where he had stood. The explorers scattered, running in panic. Two guardians chased after them, while others circled the chamber door. Their glowing eyes lit the desert night like fire. Daniel fired again, aiming for the head. The bullet struck, but the guardian barely flinched. Its jaws opened in a silent snarl, revealing rows of sharp metal teeth. Daniel realized his rifle was almost useless. "Run," he shouted. "Stay together." The team sprinted across the dunes, their lamps bobbing like stars in the darkness. The guardians pursued, moving faster than any machine Daniel had seen. Yet something strange happened. When Daniel raised his rifle again, he aimed not at the guardians but at the glowing glyphs on the stone door. His shot struck the symbols, and for a moment the guardians staggered, their movements slowing. Myra gasped. "They are bound to the chamber. They draw power from the curses." Daniel felt his chest tighten. His instincts guided him more than thought. He sprinted toward the wall, pressing his hand against the glowing glyphs. The stone burned cold under his palm, but then the symbols flared with a new light. The guardians froze in place, their eyes flickering as if uncertain. "Daniel," Myra called, her voice shaking. "It reacts to you." The others stared in disbelief. The chamber, which had ignored their touch, was alive under Daniel's hand. The glyphs pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, glowing brighter with each second. The guardian snarled but did not attack. Instead, they lowered their heads, as if waiting. The explorers watched, breathing heavily, caught between fear and awe. Daniel stepped back slowly, his hand falling from the stone. At once the guardians stirred, their red eyes flaring back to life. They advanced again, claws dragging lines in the sand. Myra shouted, "Touch it again." Daniel slammed his hand against the wall. The glyphs glowed once more, and the guardians halted. This time, Daniel felt something enter his mind, a voice that was not a voice, a thought pressing into his skull. It was ancient, deep, and filled with command. Prove your strength. Endure the curses. Daniel staggered, gripping his head. Myra rushed to him. "What is it? What do you hear?" He forced the words out. It spoke. "It wants a trial." The archaeologists looked at each other with wide eyes. Tomasz whispered, "The chamber does not see us. It sees him." Daniel breathed heavily, sweat running down his face. He felt the weight of invisible chains pressing on his chest. The guardians still waited, their eyes fixed on him. Myra steadied him. "The Pharaoh's tests. You are chosen to face them. That is why the chamber responds only to you." Daniel wanted to deny it, but the truth was clear. The chamber had awakened, and it had chosen him. The archaeologists argued in panic. Some demanded they leave at once. Others wanted to study what was happening. But before a decision could be made, the sand beneath their feet rippled. New shapes rose from the ground. Smaller guardians, like scarabs made of bronze, swarmed up in hundreds, clicking and crawling across the dunes. The team cried out in terror. The scarabs swarmed toward them, their sharp legs cutting into boots and tearing through cloth. Daniel fired into the swarm, but there were too many. Myra pulled Tomasz back as the scarabs climbed over him. The team was falling apart. In desperation, Daniel pressed both hands to the glowing wall. The glyphs blazed like fire. A surge of energy burst outward, sweeping across the desert. The scarabs screeched and collapsed, their bodies falling still like broken machines. The larger guardians howled in silence and withdrew, their glowing eyes dimming. The chamber quieted, the tremors fading until only the soft hum remained. Daniel fell to his knees, his chest heaving. His hands still tingled with the strange power he had drawn from the wall. Myra knelt beside him. Her eyes shone not with fear, but with understanding. "The curses are not random traps. They are trials. You weaken them simply by standing against them. Your will disrupts their strength." Daniel stared at the glowing glyphs. His voice was low. "Then what waits deeper inside will be worse." The archaeologists gathered around, shaken and silent. None dared to speak against Myra's conclusion. The chamber had awakened. Its guardians had tested them, and Daniel had been marked as the one to face what lay ahead. Far above the desert, the twin suns began to rise, casting long beams of light across the sand. Yet to Daniel, the dawn felt heavy, like the start of a long and dangerous journey. The Pharaoh's curses had only begun. The suns rose higher, painting the dunes with fire. The camp was silent except for the crackle of equipment and the faint hum that still came from the chamber. The archaeologists moved carefully, whispering when they spoke, their eyes fixed on the sealed door. Daniel stood apart from them, staring at the glyphs that had responded to his touch. His palms still tingled, as if the stone had left its mark on his skin. He could feel something watching him, not with eyes, but with a weight that pressed against his thoughts. The Pharaoh's presence lingered. Myra approached quietly, holding her notebook. "The guardians will return," she said softly. "They were only the beginning." Daniel nodded. "I know. The chamber was testing us." She looked at him closely. "Not us. You." Before Daniel could answer, the ground shuddered. The sealed door rumbled, and the lines of light across its surface pulsed once more. The archaeologists panicked, gathering their packs and shouting at one another. Tomasz cried out, "It is opening again. We cannot stay here." The heavy stone split with a thunderous groan, releasing a wave of air colder than the desert night. Sand whipped across the camp as the explorers stumbled back. Beyond the doorway, darkness stretched deep into the earth. Daniel raised his rifle and stepped forward. "If we run, it will follow us. The curses are awake now. We face them here or everywhere we go." Myra looked at him, then turned to the others. "He is right. The chamber is alive. Running will not end it." Fear spread through the group, but they had no choice. Together, they followed Daniel as he entered the passage. Their lamps flickered, their steps echoing across the stone floor. The air grew colder with every step, their breath misting in front of them. The walls glowed faintly, showing new murals. These were darker than before. They showed figures chained, their faces twisted in terror. Above them loomed the Pharaoh, his hands raised as if casting invisible nets over their souls. Tomasz muttered, "It feels like the walls are breathing." No one answered. At the end of the hall, they reached a wide chamber. The ceiling rose high above them, lost in shadow. Carvings filled every inch of the walls, forming endless spirals of symbols. At the center stood a stone platform with steps leading up. Daniel climbed the steps cautiously. As his boot touched the top, the glyphs around the chamber flared to life. The air thickened, and the hum grew into a roar. Suddenly, the first curse came. The lamps went out, leaving only the glow of the glyphs. A cold wind swept through the chamber, carrying whispers that crawled into their ears. The archaeologists clutched their heads, their faces pale with fear. They heard voices calling their names, promising pain, showing visions of endless deserts swallowing them whole. Daniel felt the whispers too, pressing into his mind like claws. But he stood firm, gripping his rifle. He shouted, his voice echoing across the chamber. "You cannot break me." The whispers weakened. The archaeologists gasped as the visions faded. Myra steadied herself against the wall. "Your defiance weakens it. The curses are trials of will." Before relief could come, the second curse struck. The floor shifted beneath their feet, turning into soft sand that pulled them down. The explorers screamed, sinking as if drowning in the earth. Daniel slammed his rifle butt into the floor, anchoring himself. He reached out and grabbed Myra's arm, pulling her free. One by one, he hauled the others back onto the stone platform. The sand hardened again, returning to solid stone. The curse had tested their strength, and only Daniel's will had saved them. The third curse followed without pause. Shadows stretched across the chamber, forming tall figures with glowing eyes. They looked like the pharaohs painted on the walls, their hands raised in silent judgment. The shadows advanced, their forms flickering like fire. The explorers froze in terror. Daniel raised his rifle and fired, but the bullets passed through the shadows. Still, he did not stop. He shouted at them. "You are not gods. You are nothing but echoes." At his words, the shadows wavered, their forms trembling. One by one, they dissolved into smoke, leaving only the faint glow of the glyphs. The chamber fell silent again, but everyone knew more trials would come. Myra climbed to Daniel's side, her voice calm though her face was pale. "Every curse is a test. If you resist, they lose their strength. If you give in, they will destroy us." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then I will resist them all." The fourth curse came as a wave of heat. The air shimmered, and flames appeared along the walls, spreading until the entire chamber seemed to burn. The explorers fell to the floor, choking on smoke. Daniel felt the fire lick at his skin, but he knew it was not real. He forced himself to walk through the flames, each step heavy with pain. When he reached the center, he shouted again. "You will not break me." The fire vanished. The air cleared. The archaeologists stared at him, their eyes wide with awe. But before they could speak, the fifth curse arrived. The stone beneath them split open, revealing a void of endless stars. The platform shook as if it floated in space. The explorers cried out, clinging to one another as the chamber spun. Some nearly slipped into the abyss. Daniel dropped to his knees and pressed both hands to the stone. He closed his eyes and focused. This is not real. The ground is still beneath us. Slowly, the stars faded, the floor sealed, and the chamber returned to silence. The archaeologists were shaken, their faces pale with exhaustion. Tomasz whispered, "How much more can we endure?" Myra placed a hand on his shoulder. "As long as Daniel stands, we endure." Daniel looked around the chamber, his chest heaving. He knew the curses would not stop. Each one was stronger than the last. Yet he also knew he could not give in. Humanity's strength was not in weapons or numbers. It was in defiance, in the refusal to bow before fear. The walls glowed again, and Daniel felt the next curse rising. His grip tightened on his rifle. The Pharaoh was testing him, and he would not yield. The chamber was quiet after the fifth curse faded, but the silence felt heavy, as if the air itself was waiting. The explorers clung to one another, their bodies trembling, their faces pale with exhaustion. Myra leaned against the wall, her notebook pressed to her chest. Tomasz sat on the steps, staring into the distance with blank eyes. Daniel stood at the center of the platform, breathing hard. His muscles ached, and sweat dripped from his brow, yet his stance remained strong. He could feel the presence in the chamber growing closer. The curses were only a beginning. Something far greater waited beyond them. Then the floor shook. The platform cracked, splitting into glowing lines that formed a circle. The walls trembled as dust fell from above. At the far end of the chamber, a colossal sarcophagus rose from the ground. Its surface was black stone, carved with endless glyphs that burned like fire. The archaeologists gasped. One whispered, "The Pharaoh himself." The lid of the sarcophagus slid open with a sound like thunder. Inside was no body of flesh, but a shape made of light. It rose higher and higher until it towered above them, a figure wrapped in robes of shadow and flame. Its face was hidden behind a golden mask shaped like a jackal. Its eyes glowed with a pale, burning light. The voice came not from its mouth, but from the walls, the floor, the air, and from inside their heads. "You have awakened me." The archaeologists cried out and fell to their knees. The voice pressed against their minds like a weight too heavy to carry. Myra struggled to stay standing, her lips moving in silent prayer. Tomasz collapsed completely, trembling on the ground. But Daniel raised his head and stared at the towering figure. His voice was hoarse but steady. "You are the Pharaoh." The figure's eyes blazed brighter. "I am the last ruler of the eternal shadows. My curses bind worlds. My will bends the stars. None who enter my chamber leave unbroken." The light of the glyphs swirled around the chamber like fire, painting visions in the air. Daniel saw cities crumbling into ash, armies kneeling in chains, and stars exploding under the Pharaoh's command. He heard screams, the cries of entire species swallowed by endless war. The archaeologists wept, clutching their heads. The visions tore into them, breaking their courage. Myra fell to her knees beside Daniel, her voice trembling. "Do not give in. Resist him." The Pharaoh's voice filled the chamber again. "You are nothing. A child of a young species, fragile and unworthy. You cannot bear my curses. You cannot carry my legacy. Kneel, and I will allow you to live as my servant. Resist, and you will be erased." The weight pressed harder. Daniel's legs trembled, his chest burned, and his vision blurred. The voices in his mind told him to kneel, to bow, to surrender. He could feel the fear clawing at his heart. But then he looked around. He saw Myra, still kneeling but fighting to lift her head. He saw Tamash, curled on the ground, whispering that he could not take more. He saw the others, broken and terrified. If he knelt, they were lost. If he gave in, humanity would be marked as weak before this ancient power. Daniel clenched his fists. He forced his voice to rise, though every word was like pushing against a storm. We do not kneel. We fight. Humanity does not bow to shadows, no matter how old they are. The chamber shook with the Pharaoh's fury. The golden mask tilted forward, and the glowing eyes blazed brighter. Then face the trial. Endure the final curse. The vision around them shifted. Daniel was no longer standing in the chamber. He stood in a vast desert of stars. The sky burned red, filled with dying suns. In front of him stood the Pharaoh, taller now, his shadow stretching across the stars. The Pharaoh raised his hand. I will show you despair. A wave of darkness swept over Daniel. He saw Earth itself burning, the oceans boiling, the cities falling into ruin. He saw human ships broken in space, their fires drifting across the void. He heard voices of men, women, and children crying out in fear. The weight of it crushed him. His knees buckled, his breath came in ragged gasps. Every instinct told him to fall. Yet deep inside, a spark burned. He remembered the explorers depending on him. He remembered the strength of soldiers he had trained with, the laughter of children in colonies, the simple pride of humanity refusing to surrender even in their darkest days. He shouted through the storm, his voice raw. You cannot break us. We may fall, but we rise again. We may bleed, but we endure. Humanity is not your servant. We are free. The vision wavered. The burning earth flickered, the cries fading. The Pharaoh's mask cracked down the middle, light spilling from within. The Pharaoh roared, his voice shaking the stars. You defy me. Daniel stepped forward, his body trembling but his voice stronger. I defy you. Your empire is gone. Your curses are nothing. Humanity will outlast your shadows. The vision shattered. The desert of stars vanished, and Daniel was back in the chamber. The colossal figure of the Pharaoh staggered, cracks running through its glowing form. The golden mask split apart, revealing only emptiness behind it. The archaeologists lifted their heads slowly, their fear fading as the pressure lifted. Myra stared in awe. You broke him. The Pharaoh's voice was weaker now, fading into the hum of the chamber. You are unyielding. You have passed the trial. The curses are broken. The legacy is yours. The towering figure collapsed into a storm of light, scattering across the chamber. The sarcophagus sank back into the ground, leaving only silence behind. The explorers sat in stunned silence, breathing heavily. Tamash whispered, he is gone. Myra turned to Daniel, her eyes wide with both fear and respect. No. Not gone. You defeated him. That was his final trial. You stood where none before you could. Daniel lowered his rifle, his arms shaking. His voice was quiet. It was not just me. It was all of us. Humanity does not kneel. The chamber's glow faded, leaving only faint lines of light across the walls. At the center of the platform, where the Pharaoh's image had stood, a small object now rested. It was a codex, a block of black stone with symbols that shifted across its surface. Myra picked it up carefully. This holds his knowledge. Star lanes, weapons, sciences lost to time. He meant it for his heirs. Now it belongs to us. Daniel looked at the sealed door, then at his weary companions. The Pharaoh was defeated, but he knew the chamber still carried power. The curses were trials, and humanity had endured them. But he also knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning of a new legacy. The explorers thought it was over. The Pharaoh's figure had shattered into light, and the chamber had fallen quiet. The archaeologists leaned on one another, still trembling but relieved. Myra clutched the black codex in her hands, whispering about the knowledge it held. Tomasz wiped the sweat from his brow, muttering that they had survived the impossible. But Daniel did not relax. He stood tall, his senses sharp. The silence of the chamber was not peaceful. It was waiting. The air carried a charge, like a storm about to strike. He tightened his grip on his weapon and scanned the walls. Then the chamber roared to life again. The glowing lines on the floor blazed brighter than before. The walls split open with cracks of golden fire, and the ground shook under their feet. From every corner of the room, whispers rose, 1,000 voices speaking at once. Myra cried out, covering her ears. The curses should be broken. Why is it starting again? Daniel narrowed his eyes. It is not over. The Pharaoh is not finished with us. The air twisted, and the light gathered at the center of the platform. The shattered mask of the Pharaoh reformed, floating above the ground, but this time no body stood behind it. Instead, a storm of energy swirled in its place. The mask's eyes glowed like burning stars. The voice returned, louder than before, shaking the walls. You think you defied me? You think you broke my trial? Foolish mortal! I am not bound to a body. I am the chamber itself. I am the curse that cannot die. The archaeologists stumbled back in terror. One of them shouted, "We must escape." Daniel spread his arms, blocking the others. No. There is no escape. If we run, this power will spread beyond this place. We end it here. The storm of energy grew larger, filling the chamber with burning light. The walls bent and shifted, showing visions of collapsing worlds. The mask turned toward Daniel. You are strong, human soldier, but strength means nothing before eternity. I will break you with what you cannot fight. I will make you destroy yourself. The storm lashed out. A wave of energy struck Daniel, lifting him from the ground and slamming him against the wall. His chest burned, his mind filled with voices shouting his name. He struggled to breathe as the Pharaoh's curse clawed into his thoughts. In his vision, he stood once again in a desert of stars. But this time, the stars were not burning. They were cold and dark. He saw Earth again, but not in flames. This time it was empty, lifeless, a dead rock drifting through space. Cities were ruins, oceans were dust, and silence covered everything. The Pharaoh's mask floated above him in the vision. This is the end of your people. You may fight battles, you may win wars, but time erases all. Even your courage will turn to ash. Humanity will fall into silence, and you will live to see it. Daniel's knees buckled. The weight of despair pressed against him, heavier than any weapon. His chest felt hollow. What if the Pharaoh was right? What if humanity, for all its bravery, was only a fleeting spark in the universe? What if everything he fought for was doomed to fade? The voices pressed harder. Bow. Accept the truth. You cannot escape eternity. Your people are dust. Daniel closed his eyes. For a moment, he felt himself slipping. His grip on his weapon loosened. His breath grew shallow. He could hear Myra calling his name from far away, but her voice was faint. Then, deep within his despair, he remembered something. Not visions of war, not victories, but simple moments. He saw a child laughing in a colony on Mars. He remembered his mother planting flowers in a small garden on Earth. He remembered soldiers singing songs around a fire after a long march. He remembered people helping one another even when the odds were against them. Humanity was not defined by how long it lasted, but by how it lived. By the courage, the love, and the defiance that refused to fade. Even if the stars went dark, humanity's light would shine in every act of bravery. Daniel forced himself to stand. His body trembled, but his voice rose clear and steady. You are wrong, Pharaoh. Maybe one day we will be gone, but until then, we will fight, we will love, and we will endure. That is what makes us greater than your curses. That is why you cannot win. The vision cracked. The cold desert of stars shattered like glass, and Daniel fell back into the chamber. He landed hard, but he was on his feet again, his rifle glowing with the energy of the chamber itself. The Pharaoh's mask shook with fury. The storm lashed out with bolts of fire, but Daniel raised his weapon. The energy of the chamber flowed into him, responding to his will. The rifle blazed like a star as he fired. The bolt of light struck the mask, breaking off a piece. The archaeologists gasped. Myra shouted, "He can hurt it? Keep going." Daniel advanced step by step, firing again and again. Each shot tore through the storm, breaking more pieces of the mask. The chamber trembled as if the entire pyramid was about to collapse. The Pharaoh's voice roared, filled with both rage and fear. "No. You cannot destroy me. I am eternal. I am the curse of 10,000 years." Daniel stood at the center of the platform now. His body ached, his breath came in ragged gasps, but he raised his weapon one final time. The storm surged forward, trying to swallow him whole. He shouted with all his strength. "Humanity is stronger than your eternity." He fired. The chamber filled with blinding light. The mask shattered into fragments, and the storm of energy exploded in silence. For a moment, there was only brightness, as if the sun itself had risen inside the chamber. Then it was gone. The walls stopped shaking. The glow faded. The air grew still. Daniel dropped to one knee, his weapon smoking in his hands. His body was weak, but he was alive. Around him, the archaeologists began to rise, their fear replaced by awe. Myra approached, her hands trembling as she touched his shoulder. "You did it? You destroyed him." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No. He destroyed himself. His fury was his weakness." At the center of the platform, where the mask had fallen, only a single shard of golden stone remained. It pulsed faintly, then dimmed, leaving behind nothing but silence. Myra looked at the shard and then at the codex in her hands. "This is all that remains of him. Knowledge and a broken crown. Humanity has taken his trial and survived." Daniel looked around the chamber, the walls now dim and lifeless. For the first time since they had entered, the place felt empty, as though its spirit was gone. He stood tall, though his body still shook with exhaustion. "This was never just about curses," he said quietly. "It was about proving ourselves. And we have." The group gathered their strength. They had survived the storm of the Pharaoh's last fury. But Daniel knew deep inside that this victory would carry consequences. The codex they now held contained power beyond imagination, and the galaxy would not ignore it. This was not the end of their journey. It was the beginning of something far greater. The chamber was silent now. The walls no longer glowed, the whispers were gone, and the weight of the curse had lifted. Daniel stood with the others at the center of the ancient room. His weapon hung low at his side, its energy dim. Myra held the black codex close to her chest, staring at it as though it were alive. The other archaeologists whispered to one another, unsure whether to feel joy or fear. Daniel finally broke the silence. "It is over. The Pharaoh is gone." Myra looked at him, her eyes still wide. "Gone, yes. But his knowledge is not. This codex holds everything he built, everything he tried to guard. It could change the galaxy. But it could also destroy it." The group made their way out of the chamber, step by step, through the same tunnels they had entered. Their torches lit the stone walls, now dull without the strange energy that had once filled them. The air was heavy with dust, and every step echoed like footsteps in a tomb. When they finally reached the outer gates, sunlight streamed down on them. The desert stretched far and endless, its sands golden under the sky. For a moment, they stood in silence, grateful simply to breathe fresh air. But peace did not last long. At the edge of the horizon, dark shapes rose. Engines hummed in the distance. Myra shaded her eyes, her expression tense. We are not alone. Dozens of ships descended from the sky, their metallic hulls gleaming in the sun. They were not from Earth. The markings on their wings belonged to alien empires that had long watched humanity from afar. Troops disembarked from the vessels, armed and disciplined. At their front stood a tall alien commander with armor shining like steel. His eyes locked on the explorers, then on the codex in Myra's hands. He raised his voice so all could hear. Humans. Step aside. The codex belongs to the galaxy. You cannot keep what was never yours. Fear rippled through the archaeologists. Some took a step back. Myra clutched the codex tighter, whispering to Daniel, if they take it, everything we endured will mean nothing. They will twist it into a weapon. Daniel stepped forward, his body still weak from the Pharaoh's last attack, but his spirit unbroken. He faced the alien commander without fear. We faced the Pharaoh's trials. We endured his curse. Humanity earned this codex. No one else has the right to claim it. The alien commander's lips curled into something like a smile. Brave words, human. But you are few. We are many. Do you think you can fight us all? Daniel did not raise his weapon. Instead, he stood tall and spoke with calm strength. This is not about numbers. This is about will. The Pharaoh himself tried to break us with visions of despair. He failed. Do you think your armies will do better? The alien forces shifted uneasily. Whispers spread among them. They had heard of humans before, but now they saw one who had survived something that no empire dared face. Myra stepped beside Daniel, her voice clear. If humanity must fight for its right to survive, we will. But if the galaxy is wise, it will learn from this codex with us, not against us. The alien commander studied them for a long moment. His eyes flicked to his soldiers, then back to Daniel. At last, he spoke, his tone low and sharp. You may think you have won today. But the codex will call others. Empires greater than mine will come. Humanity has stepped into a storm. With that, he raised his hand. His troops pulled back, returning to their ships. Engines roared as the vessels lifted into the sky, vanishing into the horizon. The archaeologists let out the breath they had been holding. Relief mixed with dread. They had avoided battle, but Daniel knew the commander had spoken the truth. Their struggle was not finished. That night, as the sun sank below the dunes and the stars filled the desert sky, the group sat around a small fire. The archaeologists argued about what to do next. Some believed the codex should be destroyed, buried again where no one could find it. Others believed it should be studied, its secrets used to strengthen humanity before enemies came. Myra turned to Daniel. You carried us through the trials. You faced the Pharaoh and lived. What do you think should be done? Daniel stared into the fire, his face lit by the flickering flames. For a long time, he said nothing. Finally, he spoke. The codex is dangerous, yes. But destroying it would mean losing what we earned. The Pharaoh wanted it locked away because he feared us. He feared what humanity could become. That means the codex does not belong in the shadows. It belongs to us. But we must guard it. We must be wise with it. If we use it for greed, we will become no better than the Pharaoh himself. The group fell silent. Myra's eyes softened as she nodded. Then we will guard it. Together. The desert wind swept across the dunes, carrying the smell of sand and fire. Above, the stars shone bright, as if watching. Daniel lifted his gaze to them, his voice quiet but steady. Let the galaxy come. Let them test us. We are human. We will endure. In that moment, the archaeologists understood that they had not only uncovered an ancient tomb, they had uncovered humanity's place in the galaxy. The pharaoh's curse had been broken, but his legacy had awakened something greater. The codex would not only test humanity, it would define it. And as the fire burned low, Daniel knew this was just the beginning of a story that would echo through the stars.